Hello, and welcome to the Cleveland International Film Festival, Film Sam Streams, post-film conversation for 52 Trolleybus. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm a professor of communication, film, and media arts, as well as moderator for this conversation. We are pleased to be joined by David Auerbach, who is the director of 52 Trolleybus. Hello, David, and welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Well, David, we've seen films out there about planes, trains, automobiles, but trolleybuses? Why did you make a film about trolleybuses?
I think your question already points in the direction of why I made this film, or why I was attracted to the subject. It's unusual. When I heard about this specific trolleybus, I was intrigued. I wanted to know more about it, and as I did my research, I kind of really got attracted to the subject, and I felt it had a lot of potential for exploring some themes that interested me.
Well, very good. Obviously, this is it's the longest trolleybus line in the world. And is that what attracted you to, or do you have any ties with Kremen and Yalta? Any types of ties to Russia?
Yes, I think initially what attracted me was the length, that it's the longest. I've always been interested in facts and stats, so that was one thing. And the other thing, I've always been interested in Eastern European literature, film, way of life. That was the other thing. I grew up in Austria, which is just on the other side of what they call the Iron Curtain. So it's always been kind of close to me in a way. And I read a lot about Eastern Europe. I watch films. I really like the aesthetic and the kind of emotional, the way they kind of explore their emotional world. So, and then I did a little research about Crimea, and it's a fascinating place. Its history goes way back, and the Greeks, the ancient Greeks were there. They kind of discovered the place, and I really just got fascinated. I said, I just want to go there and see the place, and then I'll do some research, and maybe there's a film there, maybe not, but at least I went on an adventure. Followed kind of my heart's intuition.
So you actually went to Crimea, and with the hopes of making a film. So by the time you actually got there till the film was completed, how long did it take to really complete the film?
So overall, it took 5 years. I did a little bit of. I didn't just go there blindly. I found a local producer who made contact with the Trolleybus institution, and I got the okay from them to make the film. So basically, I was allowed to go on the premises and interview people and all that. So I had an official invitation, so to speak. Then so yeah, that gave me the comfort of going there and not wasting my time. I knew I had access to my subjects, and the rest was going to be up to me to create something, or to find the story, basically.
Well, interesting. And yeah, that leads me to my next question. Speaking of subjects, you found some really interesting subjects, from people in the repair shops to the trolleybus drivers and so forth. How did you go? You talked to many people, and obviously they all didn't make the film. Who are some of the other people that you talked to that you just didn't have time to actually put in the film?
It was pretty much in terms of characters, early on, very clear who, already when I was filming, it was very clear who were going to be the main characters. So there was not a lot of people that that really were left on the floor. Maybe, so, I mean, I went to the place 3 times. So I'd say the first time was more of a research trip. I talked to a lot of people a little bit, right? Um, and then I had a year break until I went back, and I got to look at the footage, and I pretty much identified the people that I wanted to follow up on. And then I went back again and I just followed up with those people, did more in-depth interviews. And the same when I went back the third time, I just filled in a couple of bits and pieces that I was missing visually, but also in terms of interviews and kind of filling out the story.
Okay, well, good. Well, how was this film received? How did your subjects, what did your subjects think of the film, and how did the general public receive your film?
Yeah, that question leads to an interesting aspect of the film, because one of the things that happened, it's really a filmmaker's dream, is that political events invaded my documentary because I started making a documentary in one country, and I ended up finishing a documentary in an occupied country. That used to be Ukraine when I started the documentary, and then Russia invaded Crimea, and to this day it is actually considered occupied territory by majority of the international community. Which meant to me is that pretty much after the Russian annexation, I really lost all contact, ability to communicate with people there. Emails didn't function anymore. And Crimea has become a little bit of a closed off, a little bit of a dark spot on the map. It's really hard to get reliable information. The Russians have kind of clamped down on it. So I really don't know how the film was received, or if it was seen at all in Crimea itself. To answer that question, on an international level, the film was received quite well, I would say. There's a lot of people that really loved the film, and I think my biggest joy was that whenever there was a Russian or a Ukrainian or a person from Crimea who knew the place, they were very moved. They were really very appreciative. They told me I captured something that was dear to their heart. I captured the soul of kind of their the way they live and the way they think, and so that for me was always really a very a special experience.
Very interesting. Especially about not being able to, not knowing if your film was seen by the Crimeans. Just want to remind everyone that you can ask questions. You can put your questions in the portal. We're about halfway through our conversation with David Auerbach, director of 52 Trolley. As we're waiting for questions to come in, a couple other questions. Well, one question that has come in is when was the first time you rode on a trolley, and can you drive a trolley? I guess.
That's a really good question. I actually grew up with trolleybuses. I grew up in a little town in Austria, and we have trolleybuses there to this day. So I really never thought about this, but maybe that left a little mark on me, and I returned to my childhood experiences a little bit. So I must have been probably 4 or 5 years old when I first time rode on a trolleybus. And to answer the second question, I am not capable of maneuvering a trolleybus. It is actually it's quite difficult. Um,
I can imagine.
yeah.
Another question we have is, can you drive a trolley while asleep? I guess they're referring to the part in the film in which your subject talked about nodding off. I don't think it's possible, but can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, practically speaking, no. You have to steer. You have to operate the gas pedal, so to speak, and you have to make sure that you stay within a range of a distance to the overhead line, because otherwise your connection to your power source fails, and then the bus will stop. And in relationship to that story, I mean, the story is told with a twinkle in the eye. So there's a bit of fact and fiction there, I think. I think I think it's mentioned 2 times. Once that the guy drove like, I don't know, for like literally half an hour with his eyes closed, which I think is, I don't know, who knows, you know, he said he's done it 1,000 times and maybe he was a robot and he could do it. I think the other story is true where the guy fell asleep and actually went into the ditch, but nobody was hurt. So yeah, if you don't pay attention, you're in trouble. And especially one of the definitive features of this trolleybus is that it goes over a mountain pass. It's actually the only one in the world. So it's a very daunting experience to go downhill with this trolleybus, and it requires quite a lot of skill and care.
I bet. I bet. Another question we have is, I'm going to elaborate on this, is
Okay.
how fast do trolleys go? And I'll elaborate because they are tethered to the electricity, and I imagine they can only go so fast. Do you know how fast they can go?
Um, I would say they don't exceed a speed of probably 40 miles an hour, maybe 35, something like that. Also, um, so yeah,
Yeah, not,
a
yeah, I
little. I
wouldn't.
mean, whenever I rode the traffic, I noticed that everybody was overtaking us. So the cars and, you know, trucks and everything. So a little slower than the normal flow of traffic, I would say. Yeah,
Mhm.
which to me was also a kind of a good experience, because you slow down a little bit. You know, you have a little more time. You have the time to look around. It's charming to me. To other people, it was boring, but
Interesting. Another question, please keep the questions coming in, they're very interesting. Another question we have have you kept in touch with any of subjects from the film?
no, I have not been able to keep in touch with anybody. Yeah, that's been difficult. I do have a friend who actually did the subtitles for the film. She runs a company here in Los Angeles, and she is from Crimea, and she has family there. So she's given me some updates on the situation there, what's happening politically and economically and all that. But in terms of contact to my subject, there has really it's been really difficult to keep in contact with anybody. I sent emails, and the emails don't find a recipient, because with the change of government, that has all been changed too. Yeah.
All right, I understand.
Yeah.
Speaking of subjects, one subject you had in the film was a woman who was actually running the repair shop. Is that something that's unusual for a woman to run a repair shop and for the trolley buses?
No, that's not unusual at all, and that was also an interesting aspect for me, and it dates back to actually communist times, where there was a big emphasis on there's no difference in capability and kind of work that women and men can do. So there was a yeah, I mean, it was as you saw in the film, some of the most important and demanding and technically difficult jobs was done by women, were done by women. So that's a legacy of that that
Hmm.
period in time that was not, you know, ideal in many aspects, but in terms of gender equality, they were way ahead of of the of many other countries. Because that was
That's
in the
good.
50s, you know, late 50s. Um,
That's good to know. That's some
yeah,
good information there. Um, Another question we have coming in is, what is the experience like riding on a trolley bus? So I know you mentioned you rode on the trolley bus. So
yeah,
what is it really like being on a bus? I guess in Crimea, I'll add to that.
yeah. Well, there's several aspects to that. Obviously, it's electricity, so it's a different experience than riding on a combustion engine propelled vehicle. So it's a little quieter. The power unfolds more smooth because there's no gears, right? It's one continuous powertrain. Um, and in terms of in terms of public transport there, it's interesting because the trolleybus is used mainly by people who are engineers, by kids, by people who don't have cars. So basically a group, you know, a part of the population that is economically maybe a little bit disadvantaged. So you're riding with the common folks basically, and it's interesting to be part of that, especially coming from a different culture in a different part of the world. You kind of immerse yourself in this bubble, and you listen and you watch, and you know every time the bus stops, new people come on and some other people leave. So there's this continuous kind of input of audio visual information, which yeah, really helped me kind of understand the trolley bus, why it's there, how it works, and how people communicate, and all these kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. It's just like riding, any form of public transportation. You observe the riders and where they're
Mm-hmm.
going. And I've had the fortune of riding on a trolley bus. I used to live in Philadelphia, and
Yeah.
they call them trackless trolleys there. So it's
Oh,
a
okay.
different experience riding on a bus. It's a older,
One thing
second,
I want
older.
to mention, which I think is sorry to interrupt you, is very it was a little funny story. Um, we were riding on the highway, and there's stops every couple of miles, right? And we were kind of in the middle of nowhere. There were mountains and forests on one side and on the other side, and suddenly the bus stops, kind of pulls just to the side of the road, and out of the forest comes this man with a bucket, and the driver lets him on, and I was sitting right next to him, and he had a bucket full of mushrooms. So he had just come from mushroom hunting, and I guess the driver knew that he was going to come, or somebody, I think somebody yelled up front, "Hey, stop for this guy with the mushrooms." So I just stopped in the middle of nowhere, and this guy with his mushroom bucket of mushroom gets on. It's not as locked
It,
in into a, you know, that doesn't only stop at the bus stops. It's a little more freedom.
right. It sounds like the trolley there immerses the culture that's there.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, David, it's been such a pleasure talking with you today, and I'm sure we got some good insight. Before I let you go, can you tell us what's next for you? What can we expect to see from you in the near future?
Yes, I have actually two documentaries in post-production, and hopefully be done by the end of the years. One I went to Greece for a couple of years to shoot there, and the other one is deals with the lockdown that just happened between February and May. So yeah, been keeping busy, and hopefully you all will get to see it at the Cleveland Festival sometime next year or the year after.
Well, we hope so. And we wish you all the best with that. And we thank you very much for joining us today. I just want to thank our audience for being a part of our post-film conversation today. And I'd like to thank once again David Auerbach, the director of 52 Trolley. And thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
And to our audience, for more information about the upcoming 45th Cleveland International Film Festival, please continue to follow CIFF on social media and visit clevelandfilm.org. Thank you. I'm Eric Siler.